Greetings, and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast that aims to answer many of the RPG genre's unanswerable questions. I'm your host and Thirsty Mage community manager, David Lloyd, and this week we start a multi-episode journey to answer many lingering questions debated among RPG enthusiasts. Questions like, what's the best Square Enix title? What Atlas flagship is better? Do indie RPGs hold mustard against the big boys? And finally, what RPG does the pub and its patrons generally agree is the best RPG of all time? But before we get into it, if you'd like to have a key role in the decision process for this competition, among a host of other benefits, please head on over to patreon.com/thethirstymage to find out more information on becoming a member of the Thirsty Mage Video Game Club. But joining me this week to kick off the RPG Battle Royale is an individual who will attempt to put his thumb on the scale of a few of his favorite RPGs, NWR Reviews editor, Jordan Rudick.
Just looking at the list of games we're talking about today, I already might have an idea of which games you're thinking of when you say putting my thumb on the scale. I can't believe it's taken us this long to do something like this, actually. Like, we haven't really done, like, a ranking of things or trying to, decide, like, what's the best A, B, or C. Like, I feel like, we've spent so much time talking about individual games and individual consoles even, but never, like, what is the best of this type of game. I don't know, but I'm excited to kick it off today, start talking about some really, really good games. Definitely no duds here. Really everything that we're going to cover over the next episodes in this series, all of them are worthy of praise, worthy of being played to some extent, and this is going to be fun.
Yeah, it's funny going back, like, we've never really done anything like this. I know we've done on our, end of year shows, we've discussed a few of our favorites and that sort of thing, but nothing, no rankings or anything like that. And also joining us to help us out with this is he's here for our expert analysis on Blizzard, and he's going to probably help me pump the tires on a few different Nintendo competitors. The Talk Nintendo co-host, Casey Gibson.
Yep, I battled my way out of the Shadowlands back up for a quick podcast here. But yeah, we've got quite the lineup of games talking today. And as Jordan alluded to, no duds here, so you guys don't have to worry about any Octopath Traveler talk tonight.
I could have taken a shot at World of Warcraft during my little introduction speech, and I tried to take the high road.
That's the beauty of Last Licks.
I think we'll see about Last Licks. The podcast is just beginning here, my friend. I'm surprised that we're not recording this actually mid-raid, so that's a nice benefit for our listeners.
Yeah, it's there, like you said, no duds. There might be a few omissions that people may give us a little bit of grief over, but I think at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to disagree that any of these games should be in contention anyway. But yeah, it's gonna be the biggest challenge is gonna be keeping this within a reasonable frame of time. We're gonna have to be pretty vigilant on keeping the amount of time we talk about these games down to a minimum, so that we're not breaking the Thirsty Mage record on length of episodes.
I mean, inevitably, like, if you've got 30 years of RPG history here, and some favorite games, even games that we really fondly remember and would like to talk about didn't make the list, and that's okay. We're talking about the best of a particular set that we have familiarity with, we're able to talk about. And some games that we haven't spent time with are just not going to be on that list. And so that's, to me, that just makes for better podcast listening when we're all pretty much informed for the most part about the games on the list. So that explains some of the omissions. But, if you're listening out there, there are, key games that we don't end up talking about, please write to us, let us know on Twitter or, in podcast reviews. It'd be even fantastic. What kind of games you're hoping to see on the list or hoping to talk about.
Well, we better get right into it, because, like I said, it's gonna take some time to get through these games. So, Jordan, why don't you kick us off with the discussions this week?
Sure. So I have two, but they're both the same, just different flavors. So I don't know if you guys remember when Vitamin Water first came out. Apparently, it was in the year 2000. Vitamin Water was like a big deal, right? Like, I feel like it really kind of took off very quickly. I think its popularity, I would say, has faded. It ended up being bought by Coca-Cola a few years back. But yeah, I remember vitamin water. Like everyone was buying it. It was in all the drink machines, and I probably would have been, I guess, a high school senior, or we would say grade 10 or 11 when it first came out. And so I picked up a couple of vitamin waters because I was, I didn't want to have. I was trying to stay away from pop for a little while, and I did want something that had a little bit of flavor to it. So I'm pulling half a casey here by going vitamin water. I've got the Focus, which is vitamin A. That's kiwi strawberry. And I've got the Triple X, which I think was connected to 50 Cent at some point, if I'm remembering that correctly. And that's got antioxidants. That's is it acai or blueberry and pomegranate? Both pretty good. I think I like the kiwi strawberry a little bit better. Now maybe you two gentlemen will be able to help me, or someone out there listening. I believe there was a cherry flavor at some point, or maybe I'm getting it mixed up with an Aquafina type of vitamin water.
Propel or whatever that other crap was.
Maybe that's what it is. I remember one of the other companies, maybe it wasn't vitamin water, the brand, but one of them had some kind of cherry or black cherry flavor that I really liked, and I wasn't able to find that. It seems like the selection of flavors has really taken a dive. They only had about 4 or 5, so yeah, they're good. Like I like vitamin water. Like it's very easy to drink. It definitely has that sweetness that I like. I wish a bottle wasn't 130 calories. When you're trying to have something with water in the title, but they're good. And I was happy to I got it was like buy 2 get 3 free, so I bought an orange one as well. And yeah, I like vitamin water. I think I've always liked it, and I just haven't had it in a while. So I thought why not dive back into the well, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, as always, I've got the true and tried Aqua right here, keeping me hydrated. But as far as the vitamin water goes, yeah, I used to be super into it. Actually, when we went, when I was in college, essentially we had sort of is like a scan card, right, like to get into the buildings.
Yep.
But it also doubled as like our meal plan. So when you went to the dining halls or whatever, and the freshman year, and I guess even sophomore year when I was living on campus, they'd put money on your card, and the vending machines, you'd just be able to go swipe. And oh man, dude,
that's dangerous, man. That's really dangerous.
I spent hundreds of dollars on Triple X vitamin water specifically. Super good. I actually, I sold my old ID actually to this girl for a bunch of vitamin waters once. Because I was like a late bloomer, so when I was 16, I probably looked like I was 12, and she thought it was the cutest thing. So I was like, I forgot how it came to be, but she ended up buying me like 6 vitamin waters or something in trade, and yeah, oh man.
Why did she want your ID? Like, because she's not trying to get like a fake ID or something. Because if you're looking younger, that's not going to help.
I just look like such a little baby, you know what I mean? And I guess she liked that, But yeah, no, it worked out for me. I got vitamin water. But yeah, I used to, But yeah, I don't think there's really anything very healthy about vitamin water, by the way.
No, I remember reading that at some point, that my understanding was that the health benefits are much more exaggerated, or not really noticeable. Like you're going to get much more vitamins from foods you eat every day, vegetables, fruit, stuff like that, than you ever would from a vitamin water.
Crazy high too, or something.
It kind of cancels out any of the health benefits.
It's like, it's not carbonated, So there's that.
I mean, there are certainly worse things you could have. Just don't drink vitamin water. Think you're doing a favor for your body.
You're not
going to
shed 15 pounds drinking nothing but vitamin water.
That's right. And I'm looking forward to someone in the Discord after they shot down my smoothie binge to go after my vitamin waters here. So please, someone, give me the lowdown, give me the skinny on, why vitamin water is not as good. I mean, that said, I'm not drinking vitamin water thinking like, oh, I'm doing something really good here. I just wanted to go back to it because I hadn't had it in a long time. So it was nice to a little blast from the past there.
Yeah, there was. I think the best thing that you could probably drink if you wanted water that was flavored is that bubbly stuff that Michael Bublé has been.
You mean the
peddling.
Bublé?
Oh yes.
The Bublé, yeah, because it actually is. I'm pretty sure it's just natural flavoring, and there's no calories or
I think
chemicals
it's 0
or anything.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably your best bet. But yeah, I remember back in those days that you could walk into a convenience store and it was all the rage. There'd be like 20 or 30 options between like 3 or 4 different companies. So, definitely.
Yeah, everyone was drinking vitamin
lately.
water back there.
It's like today's hard seltzer run. Everyone's got to have it.
Yeah, good point. It's exactly like that. Yeah, very much. So.
It's actually funny. David Wright, the Mets player, because I'm pretty sure he got like a chunk of vitamin water like at some point in his life, and I was just reading here. It's like, he's going to be very well set off with due to that.
There you go.
Yeah, his 0.5% ownership equates to about a cool $20 million.
Oh, that's all. Not too bad. That'll keep them well stocked in the triple X's.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my beer this week isn't that far off from water, really. It's I think I've actually probably talked about it before because it's from a local brewery here. It's called Blanche de Chelsea from the Gainsbourg brewery, and it's just a simple white Belgium. So it's not that far off from water, really. It's just a light when you're thirsty to drink. Small, it's only 4.5, so wanted to keep the senses sharp for tonight's debate, but. Other than that, it's a pretty simple beer. Just something light to nice and go down smooth.
I'm pretty sure my strawberry kiwi vitamin water has higher than 4% alcohol, David.
Quite possible.
I think I've usurped your host role here for tonight. I think.
Yeah, if you're feeling adventurous, you might even be able to bump up with a Coors Light.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had to take a week off for the first episode anyway. I'll leave the harder stuff. The longer as soon as I start seeing some of my favorite RPGs fall off the list, I know I'll need the harder alcohol. So
that's right. Good point.
Yeah. But well, right before we get into the debate on the first round, we'll just have a quick what we've been playing because PS5 is out and there's a few games that we've been playing for that, and there's also a couple new Switch games out too. So. Jordan, why don't you kick us off with Watch Dogs Legion and tell us what that's like?
Sure, yeah. So I promised some Watch Dogs talk last week after I hadn't had a chance to pick up my game. Just a quick anecdote about actually acquiring Watch Dogs Legion. I don't know how much detail I ended up getting into it previously, but so I had originally traded in 2 games into EB Games. The promo was trade 2 games that had a value of $10 or more, and then you get Watch Dogs for free. So I did that. So I got my Watch Dogs. I guess the retail would be in Canada $79.99. So I thought trading in 2 $10 valued games to get an $80 game was pretty good. So I figured, why not do that? And then EB Games also has a promotion. I don't know if they have it in the States or elsewhere, but if you have like their membership card called Edge, you can bring back a game within 7 days. If you have, if you didn't like it, basically, so kind of like a guaranteed satisfaction thing, and I guess you get credit back, and you could pick up a different game. So that was my intention all along, was just to try it for a couple days, probably not finish it, but then bring it back, and just maybe I was going to actually pick up Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But what ended up happening is when I went to pick up the game last week, they told me that I was going to get money back. So the price of Watch Dogs Legion had dropped from $79.99 to $49.99. And this is days after the launch. It didn't come out, at least in Canada. It didn't come out into stores until the 24th of November. So it's been just over a week now. And when I picked it up, it had been like I said, it had been like 2 or 3 days. I think I picked it up on Thursday, and so that was hilarious to me that I was there. I'm like picking up this game that I've got fully paid off with that trade promo, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna give you $30 back." I'm like, "Oh right, yeah, I'm not gonna complain about that." And I figured, oh, they're just gonna give me $30 in credit. No, they gave me $30 back on my Visa. I'm like, all right, hey, that's even better, right? So they gave me $30 cash back for it. So, and then. The final cherry on top is that for the next month, I guess the month after release, Watch Dogs Legion is on a list at EB Games where if you trade it in within that month, you get $50 credit. So I paid $49. I guess technically I've traded in 2 games, got Watch Dogs, got $30 back, and then when I go back to EB Games to trade in Watch Dogs, they'll give you $50 for it. So it's basically a free rental here.
So you got
I'm loving that, right?
worth for $10, two $10 worth of
for
trade.
2 $10 games. Yeah, exactly.
Pretty good
That's
up
right.
mark.
That's right. So Yeah, I'm not complaining about that. So I'll trade it in. I'm hoping to beat it in the next week or so. I'll trade it in, put it towards maybe a pre-order for something next year. So I was really happy
You
about that.
should go buy another copies of Watch Dogs and just do the same thing over, dude. Just get all your pre-orders in.
Go get.
Man, this guy really, unfortunately, loves this game, or doesn't.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, that's gonna get me banned from the store a second time, and that's a story for another day. But, yeah. So Watch Dogs Legion, it's very much in that kind of AAA open world game from Ubisoft. You've played games like this before. I imagine it's very. I haven't really played the other two Watch Dogs games, but I imagine it's very similar. A lot of hacking, a lot of focus on stealth. A lot of trying to maybe avoid combat, avoid like killing people, doing a lot of non-lethal takedowns and sneaking around and stuff like that. The premise is that London's kind of been taken over by this almost like a militaristic state. You've got the government and the police, different kind of police forces and military forces and paramilitary forces, kind of ruling the city and kind of trying to put a lockdown on everybody. So you're trying to kind of resist that or rise against that as this corporation this entity called DedSec. One of the main hooks of the game is that you can kind of recruit almost any person in the game into DedSec. So you might just be walking around the street, you see like a guy on a skateboard, or you see an old woman, or maybe a cab driver, and you're like, or a construction worker, you're like, oh hey, you go up to them and you basically you say, hey, do you want to join DedSec, or if I help you out, will you join the resistance with me? And so you can recruit pretty much anybody. I guess that's one of the interesting parts of the game, is you can build this team of people that have different perks, different drawbacks, different stats, different equipment and abilities that they come with. So that's kind of neat. Like I recruited this construction worker for a mission, and he can summon these construction drones that I can actually ride on. So I'll summon like a flying drone, land it in front of me, step on top of it, and then start flying it like a remote-controlled car, I guess like remote-controlled drone, and I'm flying the drone while I'm on top of it, so it's almost like I'm flying with it. So it's pretty cool. It's got stuff going for it like that. I think the mission variety is lacking. You're usually doing the same thing. Not that it isn't fun, but you're doing the same thing. You're like sneaking into so you're sneaking into a building, you're avoiding the guards, you're hacking a computer, you're getting some information, then you're leaving. Like it's pretty much the same I've probably done about 6 or 7 story missions. I think they're all kind of in that vein. There hasn't been a ton of stuff that's different. One big story mission, I ended up having to make a major choice, and I don't want to spoil it here, but it was pretty cool, choosing between like a computer program, whether I wanted it to live or die. And then once I made my choice, I was actually kind of besieged by a group of like 6 or 7 military guys, all with different guns. And it was funny because the character that I was using, my starting character, isn't tailored for armed combat. She has a fancy car, and I've got like a cloaking device kind of technology on her. But she's got like a basic stun gun, like not like a rifle or a machine gun or anything. So that was pretty tough. I had to sneak around and try to take out the guys that way. But it's got some decent variety in terms of the different people that you can pick up. The driving actually feels pretty good. I do think the mission variety isn't quite, isn't ideal. If you're not into the stealth and the sneaking around and the hacking, you might not enjoy it that much. But I've kind of turned my brain off to the story. Like I'm not really paying attention to what the characters are saying or what's happening in the world. I think it is, kind of basic stuff. And by doing that, I think I'm enjoying it more, not really worrying about what is the end result of every mission, or why am I doing all the things that I'm doing? I'm kind of just taking down these different factions trying to control London one at a time, kind of stopping their operation, and then eventually like taking out the leader of those different gangs. And I'm enjoying it that way. So, I think I'm probably about halfway through, I'd say, the main story missions. I'm not really doing any of the side stuff. Just probably going to mainline it, see how it ends. And I think it's fine. I think getting it at a discount, I think there's some fun to be had with the game. I'm not shocked. Ubisoft does this all the time, but I'm not shocked it hit $50 or cheaper pretty quick. Maybe not the same week that it launched. I think that's kind of ridiculous. But I think if you can get the game cheap and you're into that, kind of a little more generic kind of open world gameplay, I think you might enjoy it. So I'll try to share some concluding thoughts maybe in a week or two when I'm done the story. But I'm having fun with it, and I am looking forward to finishing it.
So it was good. I mean, it stinks to sort of be disengaged from a story, obviously, just meaning that it wasn't really that engaging, But it's good to hear that the gameplay is still good enough to sort of carry the experience.
Yeah, I don't necessarily love like sneaking around and playing stealth, but I think it works pretty cool here. You can hack into cameras and you can solve circuits and stuff and shut down security systems that way. You can trigger traps. Everything is kind of activated by your phone, I guess, or some kind of like device you have on you. So from a distance, you can hack into cameras and then start looking through them. You can disable drones. You can hack turrets and actually start shooting as them. Like there's some cool stuff that you can do with the technology. There's progression. You earn these tech points that allow you to get different guns or increase your abilities or stats and stuff like that. So, yeah, it has stuff going for it. I just it's not a excellent game, but it's not a bad game either. There are ways to make it fun, and I like I said, I have been having some fun with it. So,
I guess I shouldn't have canceled my pre-order because I actually played the first two games. I really enjoyed both of them, and mostly because, like you said, the mechanics are really fun. I really enjoyed the stealth combat and stuff like that, and I felt like the second game was more into the stealth, so it was a bit more fun. So I was curious to see what the third one how it would play. But I can't remember who it was, but somebody I was following on Twitter who really enjoyed the first two games as well had reviewed the third game and basically. Like, I guess it wasn't necessarily a bomb, but they certainly weren't enjoying it. So I ended up canceling the pre-order based on that. And also knowing, like, there was going to be other things coming out. Because it was kind of around the same time as, like, Cold Steel 4 and then Demon Souls and stuff. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have the time. And if someone who liked the first two games like me is not going to like it, then maybe, at the end of the day, I made the call. But I guess I missed out on that EB promotion.
I can't, like I said... I can't speak to whether because I haven't played haven't really played the first two games, and I am enjoying it a little bit. I'll end my thoughts on Watch Dogs Legion with this. I find it very difficult to get into firefights. I even had like a military character one time who had a machine gun. And I got swarmed by drones and enemies, and you can't take that many hits. The game really does seem to push you towards non-violence and sneaking around and stealth.
Yeah.
So when I got into a firefight, it ended pretty quickly for me. And anytime I start getting shot, I try to run away or diffuse the situation. I usually don't try to fight or anything like that. The other point is the driving. Like some of the cars go really fast, and the streets they're not like kind of like normal like T-shaped intersections or X-shaped intersections. They're constantly like I don't know how accurate it is to London, but they're constantly like turning, and there's side streets everywhere and bridges and stuff like that. But most of the time you can just run over everything on the road without consequence. Like you can hit people, you can hit poles, you can hit like traffic lights and everything. It doesn't really have any consequence. I've crashed a car and fallen out, but I've never died that way. I've never I've never had a car explode or anything. Like there's a kind of like a recklessness to the driving that's kind of fun. So I found I guess I've unlocked a bunch of fast travel points at this point too. So I'm able to get through the city pretty quickly. And of course, normally a fast travel load time might be like 10 to 20 seconds, but on the PS5 it's like
nothing,
2 or 3 seconds, so it's nothing. So you don't even mind fast traveling a bunch when there's no load time. So that's kind of nice too.
Yeah, my favorite chase scene in London was in the movie The Man Who Knew Too Little with Bill Murray, and he's driving one of those Mini Coopers through London and having a great old time, and he gets into this roundabout and he's going in a circle. If anybody wants to see a funny chase, it's a pretty funny scene. But
Great. Yeah, very good.
for me, this might be the last Switch game I play in a while. This I picked up Sheeran the Wanderer, and so this is a roguelike because I haven't played enough roguelikes this year, and I will have a review on it shortly. I got a little behind on it, so I want to get that out soon. So I'll have more details on that. But yeah, basically this is an older game. It was actually on the PS Vitas when it first came out. And this is kind of like the gold standard of the original roguelikes, like the mystery dungeon style roguelikes anyway. So I actually owned it on the Vita and really enjoyed it. And so I thought I'd give it a roll on Switch. And basically it's just pretty much more the same. Like it's the same game. It feels better to play on a Switch because just I think the Switch is naturally more comfortable to use than a Vita. Like the screen's bigger and the controls are more convenient or more comfortable and that sort of thing. So basically it's the same great game but better. I don't know if I'm gonna get they did do some additions. They have additional dungeons that were added in for the Switch version. I think those are really more for like the hardcore people. Like I can't see myself really worrying about them too much. They got like themes towards them like there, I think one was you can't. There's no weapons in the dungeon. It's just all hand-to-hand combat and little modifiers like that.
Like affixes. At least that's what they call them in like Blizzard, Diablo, and WoW. Like to sort of just change up what you sort of normally do.
Yeah, just to give it a little more challenge or just something that you haven't played before, that sort of thing. And which is, like I said, it's great for people who are like really into Sheeran. But one of the things I would say is if you're just getting into roguelikes with the Switch, like because the Switch is really where the roguelikes are these days, or if maybe you played Hades or something and you're like, maybe this genre might be for me. This game is, if you enjoyed Hades, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to enjoy Sheeran. Like this is almost like playing Mario Odyssey and then thinking maybe I'll enjoy Super Mario Brothers 3 or something. Like it's a different game. It's a much older feel to it. Much more methodical. This is really a thinking game. It's all about strategy and item management and inventory management. So I mean, it's like I said, it's kind of the gold standard for the mystery dungeon, I would say. But yeah, I would just say for anyone who's not really like into the roguelike, this is really for the hardcore fans of this genre.
Yeah, I didn't realize you'd played this game on Vita, David. I know that people have a lot of fondness for Sheeran, and I think there might be other games in the series. I don't know if is this supposed to be the original one or the first one? Do you know?
I know there's a few different Sheerans, I think, but I think like this is kind of like the main one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know there was like a version of it on DS actually. Just looking it up now to see if I can get, because they had it was called Mystery Dungeon Sheeran the Wanderer on DS back in.
Yep, I remember that one actually.
Yeah, 2006, but the original release of the game was in 1995 on Super Nintendo. Wow. So it's been around for a while.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do it with Mystery Dungeon games anymore. Like I think I've given them the time of day enough. Like I recently played and reviewed the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, the remakes that came to Switch, and I don't know. Pokemon's all well and good, but then to add in kind of the roguelike elements as well, and I think Sheeran's incredibly dense, and I have like kind of respect for it and what it does, but I just don't know if it's a game that I could really enjoy. I feel like Mystery Dungeon is a genre within roguelites or within RPGs that I've just kind of maybe switched off for me. I don't know if I'll ever return to that. But I say that next year I'll probably play 3 of them and really enjoy them. So that's kind of the way things have been going.
It's like the boomerang. You'll be back.
Oh no! Yep.
Actually, the original Sheeran the Wanderer, this one, the Tower of Fortune and the Dice of Fate, it actually originally came out on Nintendo DS in 2010 in Japan, and the Vita one that I played was actually a port. That was the first time it came to the West, was on Vita in 2016.
We're learning
but yeah, there's yeah, exactly. But Yeah, this one is set between Sheeran the Wanderer DS2 and Sheeran the Wanderer 3. So yeah, there's a few, but
Mm-hmm.
it was the Retronauts episode that actually got me on Sheeran. I had heard it and gave it a try, and I ended up getting it on Vita. I think it was last year that they had that episode. So, yeah, I would say that that it was Jeremy Parrish that sold me on the game, and like you said, I think with the mystery dungeons, like I don't think I'll play anymore, but I think if you wanted to play one of the best, this is probably the one to go with.
Yeah, it sounds that way. Or if you didn't know if you liked these type of games, this seems like a good one to kind
Entry
of
point.
test the waters with, I think, right? Yeah, like if you like what it's doing, you could probably get into all of them from this point on.
Yep. Well, Casey, why don't you wrap up our what we've been playing with? I'm assuming it's going to be something that's related to WoW.
Well, yeah, I thought about dipping back into Octo, but no. Yeah, Shadowlands finally released the newest expansion for World of Warcraft, and it's funny, like I said, I sort of got back into playing the retail side of World of Warcraft at like a horrible time, because it was the end of the expansion, so it's like everything's been released for that expansion, and it's sort of like the lull before, the storm picks back up with the new release. So sort of one of those there's stuff to do, but it's also sort of a moot point because everything's, you know what I mean? Like there's just everything new and exciting is right around the corner, and then it was eventually delayed. So then it was we were close, and now we got to wait even longer. So finally here, and yeah, I mean, so far, so really good. I mean, the leveling experience is, shorter, much shorter than it used to be. I mean, it used to be one of those, it would take you a couple days of really grinding out hard to hit the cap. But now I think, I think I probably did it in the 8 to 10 hour range, give or take. So, a healthy amount, nothing too crazy. But there were people who, speed ran it in, 4. So, it's not too crazy, and then you start the leveling up or the gearing up process. You start doing the dungeons, getting better gear, and then going into the harder dungeons, and that's always fun, especially I'm sort of reuniting with a bunch of old buddies that used to play the game like a decade ago, so it's sort of a trip down memory lane, but also super fun to just be hanging out with those guys and going through the content. But yeah, the raid releases next week on Tuesday. That's the first time we can get into there. And then the following week is the super hard mythic, they call it, difficulties released. And that's sort of exciting because something where you could go on Twitch and they have the race to world first, and you can see in the people. And it's funny because back when I played, again, 8 to 10 years ago, it was very secretive, right? Raiding was very secretive. You didn't want to tip your hand on what your strategy was. And this is, and I'm talking at the utmost highest level of player, the professional player level. They wouldn't want to show, their strategies because other guilds could, potentially copy them or, use that knowledge to sort of better themselves off. So it was very, you'd be like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And then all of a sudden it would just be like, boom, hey, this guild got world first, here's the video, and it's like, oh, cool, sweet, but now it's like a live event where you get to watch these people raid, and they all go to a centralized gaming hub and all, you know what I mean? They're all in the same area, not all of them, but the majority of them in the same area playing together, and it's exciting to watch that too. And I've watched the last couple, so I'm really excited now because I'm actually playing it, so it'll be I'll have knowledge of what's going on versus watching and deciphering it as you go, but always a little different when you actually play it and sort of know what's going on. But yeah, so far so good. Like I said, I'm really enjoying it. Excited for Raid next week, and yeah, I'm gonna keep on jamming out and enjoying it so far.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's a lifestyle. It almost sounds like, to a certain degree, with the they having that. Like you said, each week having the events and sort of stuff to keep you...
Oh, yeah, no, that's what's cool about, MMOs is, sure, you've got open world games, right, where you could sort of go anywhere, Obviously, like, this is open world, is MMO, like, it's a breathing, living world, so it's cool to see, like, people interact, and you're out there, seeing everyone running around. And like I said, especially in the beginning of the expansion, obviously that's when the most people are jumping back in, and obviously, people dwindle out as you go. But yeah, right now the hype is up, and like I said, I think the overall sentiment is that people are really enjoying it. So Warcraft and Blizzard, they really needed a bounce back after the last expansion, which was pretty poorly received. So one of those, like, hey, we got to hit this out of the park. And with MMOs, you can never really tell right away how things shake out. But like I said, so far things are pretty promising that it's going to be a pretty good expansion.
Casey, sort of a tangent. Sorry, David, to interrupt. Do we know what's happening? I know BlizzCon was canceled this year, right? Do we know when the next one is, or when we're gonna get an update on Blizzard stuff in general? Maybe.
Yeah, they actually. Let me see it. I think it's in February.
Okay, so soon. It's pretty soon.
It's an online event, so they're going to.
Yeah,
it's
that's
going
right.
to be. Let's see. Do they have the?
I knew it was early next year. I wasn't sure when exactly.
Of course.
Online makes a lot of sense.
And what's cool is February 19th to the 21st. It's going to be online, and I actually saw that it's going to be free for everyone to because essentially, I think like the first big. Like the opening, press conference, if you will, whatever. The opening event is free for everyone. And then, like, they sell, obviously you can go to the event, but they sell online tickets so that you can get access to all of the stages and all of the panels and stuff. And I'm pretty sure with everything going on this year, they're like, we're going to open that up for free for everyone to get in there. So, going to be cool. And I'm ready for some Diablo 4 news.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be one of the big, kind of, announcements for them or showcases for them after kind of showing us a little bit of a tease last time.
Blizzard.
My understanding is that kind of every BlizzCon they maybe talk about what's coming up for World of Warcraft. Do you have a sense of where things are going, or is it maybe another year away before something else gets announced?
They won't announce a new release, a new expansion. They might in February. They might tease the next patch, the upcoming raid and, story mode, because people will be raiding it for, over 2 months at that point. There'll definitely be probably. There should be World of Warcraft Classic, the Burning Crusade expansion. That's what everyone sort of is expecting, because actually they just released the final patch of Classic tonight, which is Naxxramas, the very popular raid. So yeah, I'd imagine those two things, would be as far as WoW goes, and then Diablo 4, and then I'm sure they'll have like Overwatch 2 and all that other crap too, but stuff I don't really care about.
Maybe they might tease something StarCraft related to. I don't know what, we haven't heard anything obviously, but they've got their hands full with so many different series now. It's hard to predict what's going to happen.
Just give me D4 and make it look good, please.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see more of it. I don't know if we'll get it next year, especially given the situation of this year. But
I think that
it'd be nice to get more gameplay.
Yeah, I think like with this Shadowlands, Diablo 4, they got to hit it out of the park. But I guess I say that, but I guess Diablo 3 did very well for them.
Yeah, I think they could go into Diablo 4. I know we're getting off topic. We want to get to our main topic, but Diablo 4, I think they could do the same thing where it releases, with the idea that they're going to be building on it for years, right? And so there might not be as much content right out of the gate, but maybe they'll have like a roadmap for we're adding these characters, we're going to add these chapters later on, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to see more about that too.
Cool. Well, probably a good time to get into the final segment of the episode. It's the bread and butter of the episode tonight, and that is the big kickoff to the RPG Battle Royale. So if you missed the preview last week, so what we've done is we've selected what we feel is a fair representation of the best 32 RPG games ever made. Again, we said there might be some notable omissions, but I don't think anyone would argue that the games that we have here have a good chance of becoming the best game chosen. And what we've done was we split the 32 games into two conferences, East and the West. And then from there we've further broken it down into separate divisions. So it's basically pitting RPGs against each other in a bracket style to see who comes out on top. So in the Eastern Conference we have the Square Enix division, and within that division there's we got the action RPGs up against each other, modern turn-based, retro turn-based, a wildcard entry, all leading up to what we'll end up calling the best Square Enix RPG ever made. The second division then represents RPGs published by Nintendo. So we got Monolith games up against each other. We got retro Nintendo RPGs against each other. We'll come to a conclusion on the best Nintendo RPG from there. And finishing up in the East, we have an Atlas head-to-head, a Nihon Falcom head-to-head, to determine the best of those two companies. And then on the Western side, we have Bethesda, Blizzard, BioWare. All we're going to figure out which are the best games out of those companies. We've got the best indie developed, the best Western open world, and we got a little bit of Eastern bleed over, actually. We've got a couple Japanese tactical games and the From Software games we got on the Western side. So from here, the way that it's going to work is that we're going to stop short of actually saying, so we're going to talk about a few of about half of the matchups this week, because there's just too many to do. So it's round one, part one. And if you've got the brackets open at home, what we're doing is we're doing the middle brackets, we're going to split it up East and West. We're going to do half of each, and they're the ones in the middle. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the graphics, combat mechanics, soundtrack, story, and some of their intangibles. But we are going to stop short of actually picking the games this week. Maybe we'll wait until next week to unveil who we picked in each of these matchups. But it's going to be a blend of our choices mixed in with Patreon selecting who they think should win each competition, and then we're also going to be posting the matchups on social media. So if you're on Twitter or Instagram, you'll be able to vote for your favorite games, and we'll see who moves on. But from here, we better get right into it, because we've got a few to go with. So why don't we kick it off with the big hitters, the retro Square Enix. We're gonna go Chrono Trigger versus Final Fantasy VI. It's gonna be one big game getting knocked off in the first round, unfortunately. But why don't we start with the graphics between the two? What we're going to do is that we're going to talk about whether one of the games has a clear edge, a slight edge, or a tie, and each of the different criteria we talk with. So let's kick it off with graphics. What do you guys think of Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI?
I mean, both have that beautiful Super Nintendo, pixel graphics, obviously, some iconic sprites, within each game. But I think you got to, I think I would give it to Chrono Trigger. I think the characters are more unique. I mean, a lot of humans, obviously, in Final Fantasy. And, I mean, there's obviously a huge cast of characters. But, I don't know. So many great moments and little effects, like even in the opening of Chrono Trigger with, like, the fireworks over the fair and everything and the balloons. And, I would give it, my personal pick would go towards Chrono on that one.
So Toriyama over Shibuya?
Yes, sir.
It hurts so much to make any decision between these two games, because they're both fantastic. They're both 1A, 1B type games. Depending on the day, I think you could put one over the other in any category. I'll go slight edge to Chrono Trigger as well. I think that the towns, the just that world of the game, to me, it has a little bit more kind of texture or life to it. You go into the forests and you see the waterfalls, and it just feels a little bit more unique looking, I suppose. Like Final Fantasy VI, it looks like Final Fantasy IV, and it looks like Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy I to an extent. They do all kind of follow like a similar pattern, or they have a similar style to them. So I'll give it to Chrono Trigger for being a little bit more unique in terms of its visual style.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think it gets a slight edge as well for the exact same reasons that, yeah, the uniqueness of it. And I think the characters are just a little bit more unique and expressive over the Final Fantasy VI ones. Like they just seem like there's a little bit more personality with the characters in Chrono Trigger, I think, with with the graphics and that sort of thing. They just look a little bit more...
They're more memorable. I mean... At the end of the day, it's a lot of Final Fantasy, especially like the sprite-based, right, were pretty similar, I'd say, where, Chrono Trigger felt like it was something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that brings us to combat mechanics, and
I mean,
they come from the same, turn-based style, but again, I think in this case, Chrono Trigger might get the slight edge with... I think having the ability to have the characters do like the combination attacks and that sort of thing just might put it slightly over the top for me over 6.
Yeah, I would agree. Finding the different combinations that worked, and I think just having the different combos actually put sort of a real tangible feel on your party composition. Of course, like in a lot of RPGs, right, I want a guy who's a little more tanky, one that heals, one that does damage, But like having those different combo attacks, I can use, Luca for different gunshots and all this, and I don't know. I thought it was really cool. And again, like Final Fantasy VI, more true and tried, right? Like it sticks to, and not to say, turn-based is bad. I love it, but I think that extra wrinkle within Chrono Trigger, again, sort of, it gives my nod towards Chrono.
I'm gonna surprise myself here and go slight edge to Final Fantasy VI. Actually, I like that every character has their own kind of class that we haven't really seen in other games before. Like if you think about Cyan's mechanics, whether you think they're good or not, we've never really seen another character in a JRPG that is designed like him. I think Gao, obviously, the blue mage, Gogo with his mime, Umaru that you don't even control. I just think that the variety of the characters and their unique kind of talents that they bring. Setzer with the gambling, Edgar with his kind of being able to use his tools, Sabin doing like fighting game inputs to do his moves. I think it's just so cool. Whereas like in Chrono Trigger, you have attack, you have tech, and you have item, right? There's only 3 choices for every character. And yeah, they all have different elemental affiliations. And I do think the triple techs and double techs are really cool. But, ultimately, I think you kind of settle on a few different ones, throughout the game, or especially by the end of the game. Whereas I think there's a little bit more opportunity for experimentation with Final Fantasy VI. I would say you really have to make use of so many different party members, and the fact that you're collecting all of them at the end, whether you need to get over 10 or 15 or whatever to see your way through, that's kind of your choice at the end. So I'll go slight edge Final Fantasy VI here.
Oh, that brings us to the soundtrack, and this one's going to be tough.
Just stop the podcast now. This is impossible.
I'm going to have to. I have to say Taya for me because, Uematsu ended up working on both. Mitsuda obviously did a lot of the work on Chrono Trigger, but I don't know. I can't even choose one over the other. There's just too much. Final Fantasy VI has some iconic music that even to this day, like still comes into my mind, and Chrono Trigger obviously like it has a incredible soundtrack as well. So yeah, I cannot be. You cannot force me to choose one over the other.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, definitely a tie on these two. Both, and it's funny. It's not even like these are 2 really great soundtracks. Yeah, no. These are 2 of probably the greatest soundtracks of all time, and not even being facetious. These are unbelievable, littered with like masterpieces throughout. So yeah, to me, it's a pretty obvious tie on that front.
Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna break the mold here like I did with the previous category, but I will say that I think Chrono Trigger's music I certainly, I guess, personally prefer to listen to that kind of outside of the game. Like I really think it's maybe a little bit better suited to just kind of like casual listening or everyday listening. And there's certainly more kind of remixes or different versions I think I've heard of Chrono Trigger's themes. That said, I think that it just, when you're playing the game just top to bottom, uh, they're both incredible, and I don't want to give an edge to either one, even if personally I listen to one more than the other. I think if I going back to them, like they're just so memorable both. So I'll go tie as well.
Man, story. I think this is going to end up coming down to personal preference, because I'm going to have to give the slight edge to Final Fantasy VI on this one, because I think it might all be because of Kefka and the use of the time jump. Like, it's funny that they both use time as a mechanic, but the jump from to the world of ruin at the end and kind of going through the world again, I don't know, that to me, I just find that preferable to the Chrono Trigger kind of jumping through time into different time periods. It's so tough though, because like Chrono Trigger does it so well, and it kind of opens the game up a bit in the sense that like you can go through the different time zones, but story wise, I don't know. I have to give the slight edge to Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've never beaten Final Fantasy VI. I've played my fair share, but to me, like being able to jump through time within Chrono Trigger at will, essentially, right? Sort of, it doesn't put that like pressing feeling on you. I mean, again, I'm totally into both, into the story, but to me, it's just like it doesn't have that super pressing where like Final Fantasy VI definitely seems more like, hey, things are impending, like you start off like right off the bat, like, well, we're on the move, it just seems more like it puts more tension in there, you know what I mean? And I think that definitely goes a long way. I'm going to stick sort of right in the middle here again, just because I haven't finished Final Fantasy VI, so I don't want to say, give it one way or the other. I mean, obviously, it's like, well, I've beaten Chrono Trigger, I'll give it to that, but I'd sort of stick in the middle because I do find both of them pretty darn interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just gonna put it out this way. I think the fact that Chrono Trigger has multiple endings gives it the slight edge. I think it's as simple as that. I think they're both really interesting. The obviously the dual worlds in Final Fantasy VI, the light and the dark, and then or the world of balance, world of ruin. Obviously that event happening is momentous, but Chrono Trigger, the loss of Chrono is deeply felt. Like all of the learning about the different characters, I feel like there's a little bit more fleshing out for characters like Frog and Magus and Marley. And so I'll go Chrono Trigger mostly a slight edge because the fact that you're encouraged to play the game to get the different endings, and most of them are really interesting too. And it's close, but I'll go Chrono Trigger there.
Mm-hmm. And finally, the intangibles. On the Chrono Trigger side, I would say one of the intangibles is that it was basically an all-star team of two of the biggest companies, the RPG makers at the time. Like, you got the heavy hitters at Enix and the heavy hitters at Square, and they got together and made a fantastic game. Many would say the best RPG of all time. So I mean, you've got that. On the Final Fantasy VI intangible, like, I think Kefka is one of the greatest villains of all time, and I think the way that the story plays out is very good. And then you've obviously with one of Sakaguchi's like last SNES game, like again, I don't know who to choose in this one. I might have to go equals again. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. This is going to be one of the toughest matchups in the whole thing.
I think also I guess not really. I was going to say Chrono Trigger being sort of a standalone, but I guess you got Chrono Cross too. Well, not two, but as well. Yeah, I mean, again, sort of, I feel like they both had those intangibles that doesn't really, move the needle in either direction. Like you said, they both sort of have cool things to go along with them, but yeah, I think again, sort of stick right in the middle. I wouldn't give the edge in either direction.
I don't know. Like I don't have an answer. I kind of want to just talk it out. Like in terms of intangibles, I really like the material, the Esper system. Like I think that learning the spells that way and the way that summons are used and the fact that you're kind of collecting them throughout the game is kind of like a little side quest on its own. I love that. I love the way the World of Ruin just kind of like opens it up. There's so many different ways to play through the second half of the game. Whether Shadow survives, whether you go and get Umaro and Gogo or very much out of the way. Things like the Moogle Charm, the relics are really cool. Um, yeah, God. But then Chrono Trigger, like I think the towns and the world itself, I just think it just I know I kind of said this already, but it just feels more alive. It feels like the world has more life and vibrancy in it. Like I feel like I'd rather explore the world of Chrono Trigger thoroughly than I would the world of Final Fantasy VI. So, oh boy, like I don't know. I guess tie again. Like
Yeah.
man, it sucks. These games are so bloody good. Like
Yeah. I'm glad we don't have to make a choice tonight because it'd be completely difficult. But
yeah.
maybe it's a good time to move on to the next. Now, this is a bit of a weird matchup. I'll talk about how this one ended up. So this is the wildcard entry for Square Enix. So it's Bravely Default versus Deus Ex. Now, the reason they're up against each other is because technically Deus Ex is now owned by Square. I know it wasn't at the time, but I just couldn't. There wasn't any natural fit for Deus Ex. Like really, it probably should be in the Western Conference against someone, but there just didn't feel like there was a good fit. But there's no way I could leave it off the top 32. And Bravely Default is unique in itself as well. So that's how they ended up, together. It's gonna be really difficult doing
Apples to
the
oranges.
side-by-side comparisons. Yeah, because it's so weird. Like, and Deus Ex was a computer game. Bravely Default's a 3DS game. I mean, graphics wise, I have to give Bravely Default the clear winner on this one. I mean, I don't know if it's fair because it's it's a much more modern game, and Deus Ex is back in like early PC era, so the graphics aren't going to be terrific. But if we're trying to do our best to compare them, I would have to lean towards Bravely in that department.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't played Deus Ex. Is that how you say? I always Deus Ex.
I'm okay.
Deus
so can we
Ex?
skip straight to intangibles? I'm giving Bravely Default the clear edge in intangibles because David is saying Deus Ex wrong.
Okay.
Oh,
all
Deus
right,
Ex?
there we go.
Deus.
Deus Ex. Okay, I was like,
Oh, right, because it's not D.
I was like, okay, it
Ah.
sounded weird, and then
It's
I was
Latin.
like, did I always say
I
it
think.
wrong?
It wouldn't be an episode if I didn't butcher some English language.
It's
So.
true.
I mean, yeah, I think you give it to Bravely for the graphics, right? Like you said, apples to oranges a little bit here, but if you're just looking at the screenshots, and I should say, Deus Ex, I haven't played it. I'm looking at screenshots here. Like you said, it's dated, but it sort of looks, more generic areas, if you will, where I feel like Bravely Default really had such a wonderful art style, and the 3D was really cool, and then even the accompanying art that wasn't in game, but just like promotional stuff, it's like even that was like super gorgeous, and I just really love the style. But like I said, I haven't played the other one, so it's like you take my votes here with a grain of salt.
I can only speak to so I haven't played the original Deus Ex either. I played the two kind of sequels, I guess, Mankind Divided and Human Revolution. I actually quite enjoyed those. I think it's hard to me it looks like a shooter from the 2000s. Like I think it's a style that was really really common, and I get that it's doing different things kind of gameplay wise and story wise, but I think Deus Ex in terms of the graphics and visual style are, to me, it is a little bit kind of common or generic, I suppose. It's not a knock. I think a lot of games were doing that style at the time, and it's also not really the focus of the game necessarily either. So I'm going to give the clear edge to Bravely Default here because I think it was doing something different when it was released. Although I say that it is similar to 4 Heroes of Light, which we've mentioned on the podcast before, but Just the storybook presentation of Bravely Default and the way the towns look, especially, I think is really, really unique. So I'll give the clear edge there for that reason.
Yeah, and it goes along the same way, like you said, with Deus Ex. Deus Ex was a shooter at the time. I remember it being such a big deal, and I think a lot of it is that it just had such an engaging story. I'm jumping ahead of here to the story, but I mean, to me, like if we, since I guess I'm the only one who's played both, but I would give combat and soundtrack both to Bravely Default as well, because like you said, with the combat, they just have a different system that you don't see in very many RPGs. It is unique in itself. With the soundtrack, I mean, it's Square, like, so
next level soundtrack.
It's yeah, it's going to be great. I don't particularly remember the music per se from Deus Ex, so it's
not
obviously
that memorable.
Not something that stood out for me. No, it was this. To me, it's the story that stood out. Like it had multiple endings that you could determine by the end and how you wanted to go.
But did you have to replay it 4 times?
No, like
no, I'm kidding. A Bravely joke.
But there. Yeah, exactly. For intangibles, what I would probably say is, I think Deus Ex had a bigger impact at the time of when it came out than Bravely did. Like I don't even really recall. Like I came into Bravely much after the fact. Like I don't even really remember it coming out, so it didn't make a big impression on me originally. But I remember as a kid playing Deus Ex and having my mind blown.
So maybe Casey will be in the same camp as me. Like I was super excited for Bravely Default to come out. Like I remember that was like a hotly anticipated release for me and my group of friends. And so I guess it just depends on what your scene was at the time of some of these game releases. Obviously, I just want to touch back on combat mechanics for Deus Ex for a sec. Or maybe kind of the game mechanics in general. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one of the first kind of games to combine a lot of different genres, right? Like it looks like a first-person shooter, but there's stealth, there is kind of RPG mechanics, there's lock picking and different skill trees maybe, and you can kind of customize who your character is. And I don't know that a lot of games in 2000 were doing that. So I think that that's maybe one of the reasons why it really stands out, or maybe why people remember it so much, is that it might have been the first game to really blend so many genres that we actually see a lot of today, right? We see a lot of first-person shooters and action games in general borrow the same types of RPG and story mechanics that Deus Ex was maybe one of the first games to introduce.
Yeah,
yeah, I definitely think it was like a pioneer in that regard for a lot of the open world stuff now.
Yeah, I wish I could add anything about the soundtrack, story, or intangibles to Deus Ex, but having not played it, I would give the edge to Bravely Default and all those. But I will speak from my experience of the Deus Ex games I have played, and I think they're really fun actually. Like I think they create like a really kind of dystopian cyberpunk-ish world, and I think it is a fun world to be in. I do think that a game like Mass Effect might do Deus Ex even better than Deus Ex does. Like I feel like it kind of one-ups Deus Ex in some ways. Deus Ex, maybe the fact that you can play Deus Ex in different ways, like with the stealth and the fact that you can kind of talk to people and that'll change maybe the mission parameters, or you can solve objectives in different ways. That might be a little more advanced than something like Mass Effect is doing. But I can't say that the Deus Ex games were hugely memorable for me, even if I did enjoy playing the second and third games that I did.
Yeah, like I played Mankind Divided and I really enjoyed it. I think the combat is more enjoyable in Mankind Divided than in the Mass Effect series, but I think Mass Effect story is much more engaging.
Yeah, and it's got all these interesting characters. Like in the Deus Ex games, like it's really just the main character. I don't know that a lot of the side characters get a lot of attention, or I certainly can't remember any from my playthroughs. So
yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe the stealth kind of stuff or vibes you get from it, but this series never has interested me like at all. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it does seem to have such a high regard. Obviously, we're talking about the first one, very impactful game, within the landscape. But even the follow-ups have all gotten pretty, positive. Again, I'm not super into it, but the vibes I get are people really enjoy these games. But yeah, Bravely Default. We're on the prefaces of the second one in a couple months here, and I think I'm excited for that. And like I said, the original one it's just
same.
Really a great game, super fun, amazing music and stuff. Yeah, the story is it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but nothing crazy to write home about. But yeah, no, I definitely Bravely, man, great game.
Mm-hmm. Well, this contest might come down to, at least in terms of our audience and our listeners, our patrons voting on these two games, it might just be like, which one did you grow up with, or which one did you actually play between the two? And there's going to be games in this contest that are like that, where people have played one but not the other, and they're going to side that way. And that's okay. That's part of figuring out what people like the most. So that's we'll see how it goes.
Well, speaking of Nintendo, we've got the Nintendo division up next, starting with Pokemon Yellow versus Earthbound. Now, I know we've all played these games.
Oh, yes.
And, again, they're a little bit, around the same time period, I think, too. Pokemon Yellow, I think, would be a couple years after Earthbound.
Earthbound might be, was it 94, 95?
Earthbound,
and then Pokemon
was
B.
earlier. Earthbound was, and especially if we're focusing on Yellow, because that one, obviously would have been released, after the originals as well.
Yeah, so Earthbound is middle of 2015. So pretty late, pretty late Super
2015.
Nintendo game. And sorry, 1995.
I don't know. Was he looking at the the Wii U release?
Yeah, and
this
then
is the problem when I'm not having my decaf coffee anymore. I can't concentrate. Pokemon Yellow was 98, so 3 years between them, but not a huge gap. I think there's probably a lot of people that might have played both of these games too, even though they are fairly different.
Yeah,
I think Earthbound gets the clear victory in the graphics department.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course, Earthbound. Yeah, again, I really Super Nintendo, right? It's just such a beautiful system, right? Because it was like the last system to really rely completely on the pixel graphics, and so they've mastered it, over the course of obviously NES, and then, refined it on the Super Nintendo, and, Nintendo always gets the most out of what they make, so,
especially those late Super Nintendo games, right? The games that came out really close to the launch of the
absolutely
N64.
Gorgeous games.
We're mentioning three of them now, right? Chrono Trigger, FF6, and Earthbound, all late Super Nintendo games that really, really push that console to its maximum.
Yeah, and then again, as far as graphics, just the different environments, and if we want to wrap in like the kooky characters you meet and the enemy design along the way, it's just Earthbound, obviously, you look at the other side of Pokemon, you have 150, 151 if you count Mew, unique, interesting-looking Pokemon as well. But obviously, the Game Boy is not going to be able to compete, and obviously Yellow added
some limitations there.
Yellow added a few more flares, you got Pikachu following you and stuff. But yeah, easy win here for Earthbound.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'll give that clear edge to Earthbound.
Now, I don't know if Jordan's going to disagree with me or not, but I would give the clear combat mechanics to Pokemon.
I don't like you saying clear.
No, I'm going clear. That's one of my biggest beasts with Earthbound was I get what they were trying to do with the combat system in Earthbound, like the uniqueness of it, but it just didn't click with me. And what did click with me was the Pokemon. Like, it's very structured. The Pokemon, like. The moves do, like, you always know what the moves are going to do, like the amount of hits, like you can develop a strategy. I love the super effective or versus not effective and all those sorts of things. Like
and
I get, like, again, personal preference, I suppose, but I really love the structured combat systems that I can manipulate based on like stability or consistency. Like that's where I enjoy. Like you get into the Earthbound and all of a sudden you've got like things missing and different levels of like, is it going to do this much damage or that much damage? The randomness of it really bothered me. I don't know, bothered is
So
too
you're
strong,
saying
but
when you played Pokemon, you never used Horn Drill or Fissure or any of those one-hit KO attacks that only have a 30% hit rate?
Nope.
What about
Nope,
the
never.
the
I
needle
always
shot that's 2 to 5 attacks?
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
not consistent enough, Casey. We're not going to learn. Sorry, Eradicate or whoever or Nidorino. We're not going to learn that
I tell
one.
you what has been consistent. It is the gameplay because it hasn't changed in like 20 plus years. With the new games, it's pretty much the same. But yeah, I like the simplicity of it, and I like the fact that you got your team, right? You got your 6 team, and you can really any which way you want, and then, like David said, you start going the, effective, not effective, the composition of your party matters, what kind of Pokemon you're going to get in there, how they sort of synergize with one another, I think is really fun and interesting. And I mean, one of the biggest draws, right? It's go out there, catch the Pokemon, and build this cool team. And, sure, there were some Pokemon that, everyone had. Obviously you have the starters, I could think of like Alakazam, right? Like I feel like he was like a staple in a lot of people's different
good.
parties,
Yeah, so good. Any Pokemon that had recover,
that was,
right? Like if you had recover or a way to get health back, like you wanted a Pokemon like that on your team because then you felt really safe. Like that could be like your heavy hitter, or you're kind of guaranteed strong Pokemon, or the one that you can bring in to clean up, whatever. Like having recover was just huge. Like everyone had Starmie for the same reason.
Yeah, no, and that was like I said, back in the day, I actually had it where my brother and my 2 neighbors, like all 4 of us were really into it, so it was cool to have that. Like, all right, let's put these teams together. And I was just a dumb young kid, and my brother just wiped the floor with me. But yeah, I like the simplicity, but also that there is that depth. Just because there are so many different Pokemon.
So I'm going to go slight edge to Earthbound.
No surprise.
This is probably going to be a...
Oh, sorry.
Hey,
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
I thought... It's a... lost my train of thought now. My I don't know if this is going to be a recurring theme with me in this contest, is kind of honing in on one specific small or unique element, and maybe that being the thing that determines it. I love Pokemon combat, but don't get me wrong. I love how accessible it is. That whatever your skill level or familiarity with Pokemon, you can definitely get into it. I really, really appreciate that. But for Earthbound, the fact that one of the greatest mechanics it has not really been duplicated anywhere else it blows my mind when I think about it. And that's the rolling HP meter. I love the rolling HP meter. It has saved me so many times playing this game, and I can't believe that mechanic isn't used more regularly in turn-based RPGs. I don't understand that, because I think it's really, really cool. I think it adds this kind of really interesting risk-reward proposition. The fact that you can heal and your HP is going up, and you get hit and it starts rolling back down, and you can win the fight as it's counting down. I think it's just a really interesting thing that's added to this very, very simple kind of basic combat of Earthbound that really livens it up. And so I'll give the slight edge there because of that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. Yeah, it adds a little bit more like thinking quick on your feet, right? Like, oh crap, like it's rolling down, I got to make a move quick, and it sort of rewards that player who has that sort of quick reaction and sort of really paying attention, right? Like if you're sort of half-assing it watching TV, like, oh, you're dead, and you might not have even realized you had a chance. But, if you're actually focused in, it is cool to sort of have that, like, hey, you should have died, but you didn't. And I feel like that's always a good feeling.
We all live for that moment where you're fighting the boss and you've got like one more hit against them before you die, or like you need your next hit, your next attack, or your next spell to beat them. you get that constantly because of the rolling HP meter. So you're constantly in these really tense situations where you're gambling, and I don't know. To me, I like that tension in an RPG. Like I don't find that frustrating. I like that kind of challenge, and I like getting that moment where it's a will he, won't he, in terms of victory against a lot of the tougher fights there. So I'll go for that one.
And I'm just going to lump the next two together just to speed things up because I don't want us to get too far behind. But soundtrack and story, I would both
Big Pokemon. No.
The edge to Earthbound. Yeah, because like the soundtrack, I just think there's memorable music in Game Boy, but obviously like the limitations of the system, there's only so much that can be done. And Earthbound has an amazing soundtrack, so I don't think there's too much arguments that can be made there. And then the story itself is, I just think, like, Pokemon has a pretty simplistic story, really. There's not a whole lot of depth to it, whereas there's obviously much more depth on the Earthbound side. So I think in both those cases, Earthbound is the clear. Has the
Yeah, I
clear advantage
agree.
in both.
You know, what Pokemon's really like, hey, go out and be a Pokemon master, beat the Elite Four. You know, there are like, it almost feels more like, hey, here's some, you know, checkpoints or you know, or a bullet list for you to check off as you go and explore this world. Where, yeah, obviously, you know, with Earthbound, it's a much more focused thing, and what's really cool is just all the wacky things, you know, that as you're going through, and it's amazing. Easy, a clear victory on there. Same with the soundtrack, excuse me. Earthbound, again, really great soundtrack. It's got that nice Super Nintendo, you know, sound bit working. I do think with Pokemon, right, it's like there are some iconic songs, and like, I mean, Lavender Town, when you get the Pokemon Tower and stuff, like sort of eeriness. And I honestly, I think the simplicity of the Game Boy makes, in that instant, that song way creepier, right? Like, just the, like, it very unsettling. But, yeah, I mean, again, but at the end of the day, very simplistic. And some of these songs obviously would be recreated, if not probably all of them, with like full instruments, and you know, and you hear it and you go, you know, then I think you could have a conversation between the two, which is better. But if we're going straight out of the game, Earthbound again with the clear victory.
Yep, I mean, I think the Pokemon soundtrack is actually underrated. I think it's excellent. I think that what they were able to do on the Game Boy hardware, and just this soundtrack that really kind of like suits the gameplay and the world so well. But yeah, I think Earthbound, just its the variety of the music, I think it's catchier. I think that it's very evocative of that game too. Just a little bit more depth than Pokemon has. Story, yeah, I mean, it's not, again, in some ways it's not fair, because Pokemon Yellow, the story is takes a back seat to, I think, the experience of playing it, and especially playing it with other people. But I'll save that for Intangibles. The Earthbound story is a great one. You know, it's really about friendship. It's about leaving home. It's about, you know, it's about family, right? Like, Ness's family is a huge part of the game, and his friends almost become like surrogates for his family in a way, especially his father that's not there. But yeah, I think the Earthbound story is great. Like, I remember very specific beats of it, and kind of goes hand in hand with a very, very interesting world too.
And for the Intangibles, I'm gonna take a very simplistic view and say that Pokemon gets the
mania,
slight edge, or the clear edge. I don't know, one of the two, because one is a cultural phenomenon, and the other franchise is dead. So I mean,
how dare you?
Well, hey,
there's a fan-made Mother 4 coming.
Well, oh gosh, I was going to say, let's not forget the Intangibles. That Earthbound came in that big old box with the player's guide and the scratch and sniff stickers within that guide. Yep. So that's definitely intangible. But yeah, I mean, obviously Pokemon, right? You know, only one of the most recognizable, you know, franchises with Pikachu and everything. And now Eevee, they're really pushing Eevee. Yeah, you know, Pokemon there for sure.
I mean, the biggest intangible, and why you have to give the clear edge to Pokemon, is that the fact that not only is it a worldwide phenomenon, but it it brought people together. It's a JRPG that you play kind of as a community, right? The game really opens up and is meant to be enjoyed with friends, with other players, right? From trading to battling to talking about collecting them all and your own, making your own team, your own kind of experience with the game. Like nothing else is like that, right? And other games have tried to emulate Pokemon elements of Pokemon Yellow to varying degrees of success, and I don't think that any game has really one-upped Pokemon, which is amazing actually. That all the talented developers and millions of dollars put into game development, and I don't think anyone has really outdone Pokemon, or maybe they just haven't really tried because it's such a behemoth, and kind of getting into that is going to be really tough. I will give. This is kind of, I guess, related to story, but I think Earthbound's humor is its strongest intangible. I think it's such a funny game with so many kind of unique characters and
odd,
unique. Yeah, just odd and weird, and it's delightful in that way that if you've never played it, you don't really know what people are going to say. Whenever I play the game, I always talk to NPCs again, just to remember the funny and just offbeat stuff that they say. It's really cool. So I will give the clear edge to Pokemon, but props to Earthbound for being one of the funniest games. Certainly one of the ones with the best NPC dialogue that I've ever played.
Yeah, I was going to say, the clear win there is really at no fault of Earthbound's as much as Pokemon just being a true behemoth, a trading card game, anime, countless movies, and other spin-off games, and, it just, like you said, Pokemon's got the most intangibles probably of any game on this list, so.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, and finishing up our Eastern Conference matchups and the Nintendo division is Xenoblade Chronicles 1 versus Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now, I'll also say that in this case, I think we should compare the definitive edition of Xenoblade Chronicles to 2, just because I think the definitive edition is the better version of Xenoblade Chronicles.
And the most readily available as well.
Yeah, and really, like, I don't know, I played it on the Wii. I don't think the Wii is a terrific way of playing RPGs in general.
Are we going to include Torna with Xenoblade Chronicles 2?
I'd say no.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. I know it's technically DLC, but it feels like it's
I mean, they sold it standalone, right?
I was going to say, I have that in box on a cartridge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me too.
To me, that's like a standalone for sure.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, just clarifying. Yeah. That's good.
No, but especially when you compare two Switch games to each other, I think it becomes a little bit of a closer matchup. Especially like with graphics, I think the Xenoblade Chronicles, the upgrade in graphics at least brings it to a little bit more on
makes it
par
a conversation.
With Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Yeah, puts it in the conversation. I still think that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 gets the edge. I just think the environments, to me, the environments were more interesting in Chronicles 2, especially. I mean, there's the whole like handheld versus docked. If you played in docked, it certainly looked beautiful.
Yeah,
especially like the Uriah, I think it was with all of the environmental aspects to it, like the flower petals in the air and that sort of thing. Like I just found the designs much better in the second version.
Mm-hmm. I think it's funny because obviously I'm gonna give the edge to Chronicles 2 as far as graphics, again from a actual horsepower, all that stuff. But yeah, I think both worlds are super interesting, and I think 2 leads itself more. Obviously, there are more areas to explore in the sense of like completely separate areas, so they can really go buck wild, without trying to any continuity, where obviously in 1 you're sort of working it up, and again you're getting like as you get more north, you're getting into some snow and stuff. But yeah, I mean, again, you can look at the characters. I know that was a big point of contention as far as the original release of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 was like, man, these characters look so ugly. Like the faces look like oatmeal cookies. It's like it was rough. Obviously now on the Switch, they've updated those, making them look much better. But I still think, again, I'd give the edge to the second one, the sequel. But really, like you said, with the Switch definitive version, they've really bumped that up, and honestly, it doesn't lose out by much.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I agree with you guys are saying. I think that Xenoblade Chronicles 1. The problem is that more of the environments in the game look the same as others. Like you have bigger, less in number environments that are bigger. And then in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, you have a greater number that are smaller. And so you get more of that variety in Chronicles 2, which I really appreciate about that game. If we were doing this, and we're not, but if we threw Xenoblade Chronicles X into the mix, I think I might even give the edge there. I know it's a Wii U game, but I think in terms of just visually, I think I'm more blown away by that game. But of the two Chronicles games, I think I'll give the slight edge to Chronicles 2 here.
Yeah, and for combat, I'm just gonna be honest and say I very much disliked the combat in the first Xenoblade Chronicles. I didn't like the setup where like you had to do certain attacks in different orders, and I really loved the way the blades were set up in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where you would go into like where different blades had like just meshed well together, and that you could do combos off of each other into like the mega attacks at the very end. Mm-hmm. So I have to give the clear and concise victory of the combat system in 2 over the original.
Yeah, I wouldn't go with the big advantage for 2 over 1. I still will give 2 the edge, but actually going back and replaying the first one with the definitive edition, because in my mind, and I guess just the recency bias, right? I was like, I'm in the firm camp that Chronicles 2 is a better game, But going back, it definitely was like, okay, it is a lot closer than what I was thinking in my mind, and even so, right now, I couldn't tell you which one. But I think as far as combat goes, yeah, I'm leaning with 2. I'm still very much into Chronicles 1's gameplay, but I think they just sort of did some cool things with 2 that sort of spiced it up, changed it around a little bit. It can definitely be pretty intimidating to a new player. I they throw a lot at you, and it, more things unlock, and you're like, your head might be spinning a little bit, but when you sort of understand it and grasp it, it feels really rewarding to pull off some crazy things. But again, sort of to pull a Jordan here, if we were talking about Torna as well, I'd even say like, I love the changes they made from, the base game of 2 to Torna even, I thought were like really awesome changes. And again, like, Chronicles 2 is a long game. So, and again, Torna didn't come out for a long time after that. But if you were to play them back to back, it'd be such a refreshing, like, oh wow, I've played 100 hours of this game, and now all of a sudden it's like flipped it on its head a little bit, and give me something new to work with.
Yeah, I agree with what Torna does. I think that's one of the. I didn't prefer Torna to the second game, but I did like the combat a little bit better. The Xenoblade Chronicles 2 combat does take longer to figure out, I think, than the first game. But I think ultimately when you do figure it out, it's more satisfying to kind of become skilled at it and really piece together those bigger combos. I think that this is kind of the way that it looks when you pull off things. It's more impressive as well, with all the different blades that you can bring in. But yeah, I'll give just a slight edge, because I think that after playing the definitive edition of the first game, I do think that combat is also very, very satisfying. So slight edge to Chronicles 2.
That brings us to the soundtrack, which is pretty much the same team. I know Mitsuda did a bit of a different mix to it in the Chronicles 2 with I can't remember the name, but they have like the Celtic band there that he grabbed while they were in Japan. Yeah, I'd have to just give the slight edge, I think, to Chronicles 2 for the music. I just think I just prefer it myself over the original.
This one's a little tough for me. Originally, I was going to be like, well, it's a tie, right? They're both really great. Like you said, it's, a lot of the same people working on it, and it's a direct sequel, right? So they've got similar vibes for sure. But I almost feel like I would give the slight advantage to one, only because, like, there are a few songs that, when I think of Xenoblade as a whole, like, there are a handful of songs that pop in my head, and like, there are just a few more from the original that sort of come to mind when I just off a quick thought, But again, both really great.
If I'm not mistaken, Yoko Shimomura was involved with the first game's soundtrack, but not the second. I do think it's very, very close. Depending on the day, I might choose one over the other. I think that, where is it? There's the main kind of theme you hear. Gower Plains,
the one that's in Smash Bros.
Yeah, so Gower Plains in Xenoblade Chronicles, I think, is probably the best music in either game, and so I'm going to give slight edge to the first game for that. I do really like some of the battle themes in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but yeah, it's almost too close to call, except for the fact that Gower Plains has the day and night themes. I think they're both really good.
Yeah, like I said, it's sort of just, that was the one that popped into my head too right away, right?
Yeah,
so it's like, they're both amazing, but that one, what's the first song you're thinking about?
I can't come up with one for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that's as iconic as that song. So
yeah, no, for sure.
Slight edge to the first game.
For sure.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to mix up the last two just for time's sake, as well as, to me, they go hand in hand. Story and intangibles, I will give that I think Shulk is probably the stronger protagonist over Rex, but I just preferred the story of 2 over 1, and at the end of the day, intangibles for me, it was that Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I put in my first playthrough, I put in like 120 hours, and it felt like nothing. And then I started it again and put like another 40 hours in, and only stopped because I got distracted by something else. And Xenoblade Chronicles 1, I was counting down to when I was done, because I was like done with that game.
Going for me, story-wise, I like them both for sure. I think the first one has a little bit stronger of a sort of like, I don't know, more of a driving force. Not to say the second one didn't. Again, I almost want to say even on that one. Like, it's really hard to pick which one, because like I said, I like the story in both of them. I'm going to tie. Intangibles, you've got what's interesting about Xenoblade 1, right? Obviously, the whole freaking, it's not going to come to America. Oh, you know what I mean? Like the whole Project Rainfall, getting it over here to begin with, and then for all of that nonsense, for it to turn out to be one of now Nintendo's, flagpole series, right? I mean, It sold over 2 million, the second one on Switch, which for a JRPG, that's pretty crazy, So I think that is really strong on that front. And then more of a personal intangible for me with the second one is, it was pretty early on with the Switch, right? Within the first year, it was released on the Switch, and David and I would play, and we would talk about this all day in Slack. Like it was like that was one of the most fun experiences. Like having it be very much a single player game, but it felt like a joint experience. And that's like, man, too bad freaking Jordan wasn't around.
David forgot to mention during his discussion of the intangibles that he prefers Shell because he doesn't like Rex's costume. He doesn't like the I don't even know what you would call them.
The sailor boy?
Yeah, the overalls with the I don't even know how to describe what Rex is wearing. Yeah, it's quite weird. So story, I think Shulk's journey is ultimately more memorable. I think he's the better character. I think he's better written than Rex is. I think that the world, I think, of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 might have a little more to offer, but the fight between the Bionis and the Mechonis, like it's such a that kind of like really large build up, I think is very and then the fact that you end up kind of like interacting with them later, and you see kind of the even the two, just these two kind of like land masses, then this history between them, like it just feels more
grandiose.
It has more gravity to it. Yeah. There's just more energy to it, I guess. So I'll give story to Xenoblade Chronicles slight edge. Intangibles I'm going to give to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for all the blades. I think that the fact that there's all the different blades you can recruit. I think the cast.
We know
I
why
think I
Jordan really likes those blades.
Yep. Hey, I'm not averse to that. Like I don't mind. And I thought the characters were just more interesting overall. Like I really liked Morgaine and or Moraine.
Morag, baby.
Morag, sorry. Yeah, I liked Morag. I liked what was the guy's name who made Poppy? He's
not Tatsu. That was from X.
Yeah.
Oh
What's
man,
the Nopon's name?
I can't believe I'm blanking his name. Oh my god, hold on.
Nopon in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I think him.
I'm ashamed
and building
of myself.
Poppy is really cool.
Oh, of course, is freaking a whole Nopon wiki page here.
Tora.
Oh yeah, there it is.
I think Tora. Yeah, I really like Tora as a character. I think
I love the Nopon.
They're a great race in both games. But I just think the overall cast is stronger.
I love Nia too because she was.
Yeah, she's great.
Oh, she'll tell you how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so I give the intangible to the cast of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 over. They feel like friends. They feel like there's humor and there's they don't always take themselves so seriously. Whereas in Chronicles 1, like the story, I guess it feels a little bit more serious or a little bit more dire. But yeah, I like the lighthearted, even the back and forth between like Pyra and Mithra and Rex, that's all really great. So I'll give intangible to 2 as well.
Yeah, it sort of has that Chrono Trigger Final Fantasy 3 or Final Fantasy 6 vibe, right? Where it's like
For sure.
Chrono Trigger is a little bit more leisurely, as in, you can sort of take your time. Same with 2, where like the first one, Xenoblade, it seems like you said more urgent. Like, man, things are gonna happen if we aren't making moves.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that takes us to the Western Conference. We got 4 more left, and I'm looking at the time and thinking we're gonna have to speed it along a little bit more than we have been. But
hold on, David, I have to bring this up because Casey and I assume we're talking about it. Are you not looking at the notes and what Casey and I have been writing in the notes?
Oh no, I've been.
Yeah, he was like, maybe we should do all these tonight.
I put in all caps in the notes just above the listing of the games. I don't think we can do all these tonight.
And then I put the
cut
X,
a few.
I put the X.
Casey and I started putting X's.
And then he's like, next up, we've got the Square Enix division.
The first one, man. Casey's put an X beside it. We started talking about it.
I had handwritten notes I've been looking at.
Well, it's all good.
Well, why don't we cut it? I don't want to shortchange the Western Conference. Maybe we should
do one more at least.
One more?
We got to do this one with Casey.
Yeah. Do it. So this one, God forbid, I can't make it next week or something. Then
okay.
You two would be
we'll do one on the Western side.
Yeah, do
this
one.
This is Diablo 2 versus World of Warcraft.
Oh Lord.
Well, okay, so Casey, clear edge to. Actually, I don't know if you're going to be where you're going to be here. Like, I know you play a ton of World of Warcraft, but you also have an extreme fondness for Diablo 2. So this could be more interesting than I think.
Oh yeah, no, there is absolutely no clear cut winner here. I'll make that up front.
Good.
I guess I'll just take the helm here for the most part. I know obviously
I'm gonna leave it to you two because I've played World of Warcraft with you, Casey. That is the extent of it. So I don't feel like I can really contribute. So I'll let you two guys run with this one.
All right, yeah. So I guess we'll go with D2 because obviously Jordan will be able to partake in that one. So if we're looking at the graphics, it's going to be strange because World of Warcraft has had such a long, storied lifespan, right? Where if you look at the graphics from day one versus where if you look at the graphics now, you'd be like, holy cow, So I think. I mean, I if we're going with the fluidity of World of Warcraft, over the course of the lifespan, right? Warcraft's probably got better graphics, especially now, like a lot of the new zones are really gorgeous, a lot of cool spells and armor sets and stuff. But Diablo 2, it's got its charm. It's the isometric sort of like, it was released in 2000, right? So it's got that. It is definitely not the most beautiful game, but what it lacks in graphical fidelity, it makes up for in atmosphere and like setting and tone. They work with what they have, and I think it's incredible. But I mean, again, like they're really like we were talking in the Square Enix division, sort of difficult to compare the two. World of Warcraft also has a very more cartoony look to it a little bit. And I think that's important with a game that's gonna, that is 15 plus years old. Obviously, if you have a super realistic, hyper realistic graphics art style, it's not going to last the test of time here. So, I guess it's sort of weird, but I'd give the nod to World of Warcraft, but not by much.
Yeah, I would too. I don't think Diablo 2's graphics hold up as much. I think it's tough, that top-down perspective. I think it was good at the time. It really did a good job of kind of like building on what Diablo 1 had done. I might even say the first game in some ways visually might hold up better. Just I think of some of the different environments, like the jungles in Diablo 2 and the deserts. I don't know that they are as visually appealing as they were when that first game came out. And I think the drop off is much more significant. Whereas World of Warcraft, like I think anyone could look at the game when it first came out and even now, and you'd still kind of recognize it and still think, oh, this is very, very playable, very accessible. And that art style that they chose for was smart because they knew that could last for a game that is intended to be ongoing, right? So yeah, I agree with you, Case. I'll go World of Warcraft slight edge on the graphics.
Yeah, it's funny too. You look at like all the quote unquote WoW killers, like the other MMOs that come out, and yeah, a lot of them do the like more realistic art style, and like even at the time of release it's like it doesn't look great because just the nature of like so many people in the same area and stuff. And then it's like, what's this going to look like in 3 years if it actually lasts that long? So yeah, definitely smart of the dev team to go with that route. And even so, you were saying still look at the very first iterations, sort of stands the test of time. I mean, Classic just released, a year and change ago, and people are playing it and loving it. And,
exactly.
Even you go back, like they're not the most smooth models of all time, but like, yeah, they still very much do the job.
Yeah, and I don't think you could do the same thing for something like Diablo 2. I think people, after having played Diablo 3 and looking forward to Diablo 4, seeing it a little bit, I think it really, really makes it hard to go back, whereas World of Warcraft's not really like that. You can play more recent versions, more recent expansions, and it's not going to sour you. It obviously hasn't soured anybody on returning to the beginnings of that game.
Now, if we're going to look at combat mechanics, hoo-wee, again, very, very different, right? These are different games, of course, but you look at World of Warcraft, there are more classes than in Diablo. I believe Diablo has 7. Diablo 2, right?
5 plus the 2
plus
from the
expansions, right? Yeah. The Druid and the Necromancer. So you got 7.
Oh, Druid and the Assassin.
Assassin, that's right. The Necro is, yep, that's right. World of Warcraft, I think, is up to like 10 or 11. I don't know if I could count them, but I'm not going to. The combat, right, gameplay. So, Diablo 2 action RPG, very much you're clicking around. You're casting your spell with right click, and you could change it on the fly. You're going to use your 1 through 4 keys on potions, and that's that. You're going to level up killing monsters and getting new abilities, and definitely cool. You got the talent tree and how they synergize with one another, right? So and that was added into the game, but like, I can have this firewall, but it's actually improved if I have more points in fireball, which is earlier in the tree, so they all work together, which is cool. And all sorts of different builds. Now what's interesting is you sort of make a character and you're locked into that decision. They have again added things where you can reset your talents, but like I think you can only do it 3 times ever. You know what I mean? It's like a quest reward. So it's very punishing on that sense, and you sort of got to know exactly what you want going into it.
Yeah, you got to plan. You got to kind of plan out the whole thing. I remember like flipping through strategy guides. I feel like I spent more time reading strategy guides sometimes than actually playing the game. So I'd be planning out. I remember when the expansion came out, I had an expansion kind of handbook that showed me like all the druid abilities and the assassin abilities, and like The druid was a really interesting one to kind of build out, because if you wanted to choose like a spellcaster, or if you wanted to focus on either being like a werewolf or being a werebear, like it really felt like you were going for a totally different style. And I remember like agonizing over the decision of what kind of druid I wanted to play as. Really, really interesting character. But yeah, I don't know. Combat mechanics are really tough, because they're I think for both games it's actually quite simple in terms of what you do. It's not overly complicated. Like you're kind of, in both cases, you're kind of pointing and clicking, like you're clicking on enemies in Diablo 2 from a different perspective, but you're almost doing the same thing. Obviously, you're cycling through abilities, many more different abilities in World of Warcraft. All the abilities kind of on your hotkeys or your hotbar at the bottom. Whereas Diablo 2, you're probably not using that many different abilities. Like I think if you're a sorceress and you have a frozen orb, you're probably sticking with Frozen Orb for considering it's the most powerful ice ability. You're probably sticking with that for most of the playthrough from that point forward. So there's maybe less variety or less you can do in Diablo 2 once you get to that kind of that upper end of the character.
Yeah, I remember like, oh, I'm playing a paladin, and it'd be like, well, are you going to be a Hammerdin or are you going to be a Zealadin, And it was like one of those, you very much pick your ability, and yeah, it's like that's the ability you are using. And like you said, maybe there'd be a utility spell you could cast a little bit, but pretty much it's spamming the one. Where, obviously World of Warcraft is much more about getting your rotation down, and doing those things. And I would say obviously the bosses are more in depth as well. Diablo, there are end bosses where, they're tough and they do things. But even like, in WoW, as you're playing in dungeons, which, aren't even necessarily high-level dungeons, they're still bosses with mechanics, and sure, like, the lower levels are easier, but there's still things you have to do and pay attention to, so, to me, the gameplay is more fun in WoW, and then it gets to the point where it's like, oh, now I'm going to try and do more damage than everyone else, I'm going to try, if you're a healer, do more heals than other people in the raid kind of thing. So I think there's more variety, again, just by the nature of the game, right? Like, it of course, it's going to be more in depth, but, the simplicity of Diablo 2 is appealing as well, like you said, you could sort of, this is what I want to do, this is the spell I like, and I'm going to build my character around that. And you don't really need to do too much research. Like, of course you can, but like, you could make way where WoW, if you really want to be good, you're doing a lot of research and stuff, online. Like you're going to read up on your class. You're going to see why these abilities do more damage and how they interact with different things. So, again, like I'd say a slight edge to WoW, mostly because of the complexity added upon it. But again, what's interesting with WoW, things change so fluidly over the years that there are times when, hey, I'm playing my class and I love it. And then there are other times when you're playing it and it's like, oh, these changes suck. And now my character sort of blows, you know what I mean? And I got to change up the way I'm playing because of that. So there's a little bit of give and take, but overall, I'd say the slight edge to WoW on that one.
Yeah, I'll do that as well. I prefer the simplicity of something like Diablo. Obviously, not a huge fan of MMOs, but I can appreciate like all the different things you're having to manage while you're playing a game like WoW. All the different abilities, and then thinking about your role and the role of your different teammates when you're on raids and stuff. Like there's definitely more involved, right?
Yeah, and then you start doing, raid leading or leading your group and explaining different mechanics and stuff. So yeah, it is, again, they're very different games, but on that front, like you said, WoW on that. Yep. As far as the story or soundtrack, I guess, now this one is real tough for me because, man, Diablo 2's so much nostalgia, dude. Like listening to that soundtrack, like the Lord of Destruction's freaking login screen, dude. I can hear that, and I am back in my freaking childhood bedroom playing it at 2 a.m.
Absolutely.
While my brother's sleeping on the bed, and I'm smiling ear to ear because that means I get to play as long as I can stay up. But WoW again there's what's interesting about WoW is there's so many different zones and each area has their own music, so just by the vast quantity of music, is really impressive with WoW. And again, there are a lot of really amazing tracks. Like I can go back and listen to like the Westfall Zone, and it's just like super relaxing and really peaceful. But to me, I would say Diablo 2 gets the slight edge on this one. I love the tone of it. Obviously, it's really dark, and Diablo is that hellish nightmare, right? And that sort of appeals to me a little bit more than the WoW front. And I would even, sort of, again, keep this moving. I'd rally that into the story as well. WoW, again, it's an ongoing story, right? You don't get to the end of it because more comes eventually. And you could look at different points in history where it could be like, Wrath of the Lich King. That expansion had an amazing story, tied to Arthas and being the Lich King and all that is like really amazing. But then there are other ones like Battle for Azeroth, the most recent. It's like the story within it, it's like, so it sort of peaks and valleys with WoW, where to me, Diablo 2 is just money all day. I love the story. I love, I love that universe so much. So I would go slight edge on Diablo in that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'll agree with you. Soundtrack. I think Diablo 2 soundtrack. I think it's one of those games where every area that you visit perfectly is suited to the music that's playing at that moment. Like it really, really nails that. The first game, the music in Tristram was so hauntingly like fitting for that town, right? Like you felt unnerved to be in that place. They were doomed
to begin with.
Yeah, like you felt like you were there. I feel like it had such a good job of evoking that sense of dread of being the town outside of a possessed and demonic cathedral. Like it was just such a good job of that. And I think Diablo 2 kind of carries that torch. I can't say that I've really heard a lot about the WoW soundtrack. I'm sure it's good. But yeah, Diablo 2 to me, like I would still listen to that music. And if I heard it, it would bring me back to playing it. So I'll give a slight edge there. Story, I'm actually on the other side of you, Case. I'm going to give, without knowing a lot about it, I'm going to give it to WoW because I feel like the ability to carry cohesive storylines and characters through so many expansions, I think, is an incredibly impressive endeavor. Whereas when I'm playing a game like Diablo, I don't really care that much about the story. Like I'm sure people do, and I don't think it's bad. It's just the story of the Diablo games to me really doesn't mean much. Like I care about like my progression. I care about getting further in the game, becoming a stronger character. The finding better items is such a huge part of the draw. And then Diablo 2, like the multiplayer and just to me it's all about like the getting to the next part, but not the story of the next part, just kind of like advancing myself through the game, I suppose. So I'm going to give the slight edge to WoW for the story for the reason that I just don't really, it's not a big part of the enjoyment of Diablo games for me.
It's so funny that you say that because I'm almost like the complete opposite. Yeah. When I play WoW, it's like, whatever, like, let me get this quest done so I can get that XP, so I can level up, so I can keep moving on. I do, like pretty much like the broad strokes of the expansion, like the big storylines, like I follow along with, you can sort of, obviously they're front and center. But like when I leveled up my character, it's like I just skipped through all the cutscenes for now. It's like I want to, get to where I got to go. Where Diablo for me is much more like I'm invested in that world and the characters there. And, even with Diablo 3 in the beginning when it was in real rough shape, like I still enjoyed the story. I thought, like to me, that was cool. And even like with Diablo Immortal, like obviously like a big meme. But, when they're like, yeah, this is going to really, follow more closely, after the events of the World Stone and everything that went down with Baal, like, that I was like, okay, like I definitely don't want to play a stupid mobile game, but I will because I want to see what's going on with this story, and I'm sure it would be, passive, some sort of fun, even though it's not something I ideally want, but yeah, that's why Diablo gets it for me. But yeah, it's just sort of funny. We were sort of opposite, same feeling, but sort of opposite sides of the fence. And then yeah, as far as the intangibles go, I mean, World of Warcraft, again, it just had its 16th birthday. It is, it's got to be one of the most, if not the most grossing game of all time. or up there, probably GTA 5 or whatever. But again, WoW was a phenomenon in its own right. You know what I mean? Back, I remember the South Park episode. They used to have, there was like 12, 14, 15 million people playing at one time. Which it's like, good Lord, and all those people are paying $15 a month.
Yeah.
But then Diablo 2, I mean, if you look at it, a lot of people, people still play that game to this very day, and just the countless hours of my life, and I've spilt plenty of hours in WoW as well. But like Diablo 2, I don't know, man. The loot, finding that the first night I got a Stone of Jordan, dude. I'll never forget that night either. It was like, oh my God, we got an SOJ, boys.
Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah, there's something really, really special about finding like a set item or a legendary item, like especially the legendaries. Like when you get your first one, like I remember getting the legendary Flamberge sword for my Necromancer. I might have had like the word bone in it, but it didn't really matter what it was called. It was so cool to pick that up and see the unique look it had when it was equipped to my character. Collecting all the set items to see what their bonuses would be, it was really cool. Like Diablo 2 had a really
the Shaco, dude. Remember that?
It had a really good way of making you feel like that you've accomplished something. Like when you level up and you choose a new spell, or when you mentioned, Casey, earlier the synergizing of different talents. Like I thought that was really cool when they implemented that. But yeah, just the loot grind in Diablo 2 was so satisfying. And again, can't I'm a broken record here. Can't speak to World of Warcraft's intangibles too much. But yeah, you're right. Like the fact that this game has survived for so long and really been the master of the MMO genre for years and years and years. Like massive props and respect to Blizzard for creating this game and this world and this community that believes so much in this game and wants to continue to be a part of it. Like, I would give the slight edge to World of Warcraft here just for its longevity. Like, yeah, I know people still play Diablo 2, and I still love that game, but a lot of it is nostalgia now. And I didn't love Diablo 3 as much. I'm looking forward to 4. Maybe we've been spoiled by the second game. I don't know. This is a really, really close to a tie, but I want to get, just for the fact it's staying power alone, I give the slight edge to WoW.
Yeah. I mean, Warcraft's done something that no game's ever done, right? Like, been around for that long and continues to, more or less, strive. Obviously some sort of bumps along the way, but yeah, it's funny to think back to Diablo, and it was when I'm sitting there, right? We're playing on the PC. We don't have a TV in our room. Mm-hmm. I don't have a second monitor to watch Netflix, but I would just do Baal runs or Mephisto runs over and over and over again. And it was all, honestly, man, just like, give me that one item I want to find. Like, let me find that amazing item that now all of a sudden I've got, trade material to go, and I can spend all night, trying to flip this for that item and this item and see what I can sort of work out of this. And it's just for hours on, like, I wouldn't be able to do that today, but and again, I was much younger, and I think it's easier for younger people to just, literally sit all day and play games and not really think about it. But man, like, what I wouldn't do to like be able to feel that one more time, I remember one day, and I might have mentioned on here before too, where it's like I woke up at 9:00 and my brother was gone all day, so it's like I'm gonna be playing Diablo all day, and then literally a blink of the eye, and I was like, oh my God, it's like 7 at night. I haven't eaten all day. Mm-hmm. I'm hungry. Where did the day go?
There's no question. Like I had those experiences too, and the memories of playing Diablo 2, like it'll be some of my fondest video game memories ever. And maybe some that haven't even been replicated or eclipsed since. Like that, I think that's amazing to me that game was able to give me that. But yeah, the fact that I think as someone who doesn't really care for WoW, I can still think of it so highly. I think that's what's really giving me the intangible edge to that game. It really is incredible.
Definitely two very good games.
Now, I know people have been missing David from the conversation, and we had to cut out some of the game. We had to cut out some of the games we were going to talk about, and we cut out Last Call all for this. So we do have a lot more games to cover. This is kind of our kind of premiere episode, talking about these the battles between these amazing games. David, what can people expect in the weeks ahead? Like what's next for us?
Well, next week will be more of the same. We've got there's a few that we didn't get to tonight that we'll have to take on next week. So it would be the Skyrim, and we'll probably look at the BioWare games. We also got Atlas and Neon Falcom. So we'll try to get through as many as we can next week, and then I imagine we'll have a little bit of bleed over the week after, which will be our Demon Souls episode. So we'll round out the first round between the next 2 weeks, and then start up the round 2 in the new year.
Sounds great. So you mentioned Demon Souls. We're going to get it. We'll have a dedicated Demon Souls episode with maybe a little bit of the contest bleed over there. That's fine. But yeah, this is great. Like I kind of anticipated that this episode or this series would take longer, and that's okay. We also had a couple of games we wanted to share some impressions of, so stay tuned for more of that. Obviously, when we get Cyberpunk in our hands, we're going to be sharing our thoughts on that game. Probably not next week, but because I think it comes out on the 10th, which is the end of next week. But maybe even at the beginning of the Demon Souls episode, and certainly the ones after that, you'll hear thoughts on that game as well. But I think that's going to do it for this one. We're already kind of around the 2-hour mark, so definitely a long episode. Woo-wee. Thanks for sticking with us, everybody. Hope you enjoyed listening to three of us talk about some very good classic games, some contemporary games we've been playing as well. Thanks to Casey for joining us for this one. Always great to hear his thoughts on games other than World of Warcraft, and then hear my.
I know you love my Octo talk.
Yeah. Every episode you're so close to getting cut, but we keep you around anyways. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast on your podcast app. Please leave us a review. It really helps with visibility. I think we've been getting some new listeners to the podcast, which is awesome. If this is the first episode you're joining us for, or you kind of just arrived at the Thirsty Mage, we have a website, thirstymage.com. We just posted a review of a game called Haven, which is my first PlayStation 5 review. Kind of a smaller game, but a fun one nonetheless. So you can check out that review on thirstymage.com. We've got some gameplay on the Thirsty Mage YouTube channel. We've got a Discord channel that's always pretty active with RPG Talk, the Patreon that David mentioned at the beginning of the episode as well. I think we're going to try, David, we're still aiming to do a video review for Haven. Maybe I can get you some more footage for that.
Yeah, probably be, I'll probably have it done over the weekend, so probably like Monday, Tuesday, I would imagine.
Sounds great. So you'll be able to get a little bit more Haven coverage coming up soon too. It's on PS5, I think Xbox and PC right now, coming to Switch and PS4 later. It's a pretty interesting game, very reminiscent of something like Flower, if anyone has played that PlayStation game. But yeah, this will do it for tonight's episode. The kind of first parter, almost half of the first parter of the Battle Royale from the Thirsty Mage. But definitely had a good time talking to you guys about these, and hope you had fun listening. So that'll wrap us up for tonight. Have a good night, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Adios.